The divine council, which is really God's rule through his heavenly host or his non-human imagers, has a direct intersection with his human imagers, life on earth. And the biblical story, as it were, is really about the restoration of God's rule on earth through his imagers, whether they be human or non-human, to restore Eden, to reenact, restore, whatever word you want to use, his original plan to live with his human creations, those who are like him, who image him, along with his invisible family, his spiritual family, his non-human divine family, to have us all as one family on earth, administering, stewarding the creation, which was at the beginning just a little slice of creation, just a little part of the globe. But God wanted, through his promise and his covenant, his command, his mandate to Adam and Eve, to make the rest of the world like Eden, where he lived and they lived with him. And so that post-fall is where biblical theology moves, how to restore that. And so the divine council, the unseen realm, is an inextricable part of what's happening with us.
Welcome to another episode of Ring Them Bells, where we're rediscovering the Bible on its own terms. And we found the supernatural focus of the Bible has been suppressed, and we're bringing that out into the light so that we can see the good news about what Jesus has done for this world. As always, I just want to take a second and ask you to subscribe. It means so much for this channel for you to take a quick second. Please like, please share, please subscribe. It helps us so much get the good news out about what Jesus has done for this world.
The two-sidedness of water, and that it can destroy life and it can bring life. And so the Tehom is destructive waters, or just chaotic, unruly waters where life can't develop. And then
there's the Mayim.
And there's the Mayim, which is then neutral waters. And in Genesis 1, we have the Tehom. There's darkness over it. And you're supposed to just get this picture of, I guess, we're out of luck.
Yeah, if that was the end of the story. Irony is that's the beginning of the story.
That's the beginning of the story.
But if the beginning was the end.
But then the Spirit of God shows up and the Tehom becomes Mayim. And so then we talked about in Genesis 2, the spring, the flow that comes up out of the desert and waters all the land. And
makes the mud.
Makes the mud, which makes the humans.
Right.
Right, the Ed makes the...
No, the Ed makes the Adamah for the Adam.
To form the Adam. And I remember as a younger person reading Genesis 2, getting to the rivers.
Yeah.
And really feeling like, why is this here? And the only thing that made sense of it was, this must be here because it's trying to describe an actual place that existed. So it's some sort of map of where Eden was, maybe. But it always just stuck out like a sore thumb. So we talked about these 4 rivers that all come from the one river, which is the spring that comes from Eden, and how you have this whole paragraph and you follow these rivers, and one goes to Egypt, one goes towards Egypt, kind of the same area, Cush.
But the point is, it's the name of the spring in Jerusalem.
But it's the name of the spring in
Gihon.
Jerusalem. The Gihon.
Yeah.
And then the Euphrates and the Tigris, which are associated with
Assyria and Babylon.
Yeah. So you've got the Garden of Eden, from which God has tamed the Tehom. And then he makes life-giving water come up out of the land. And now all of a sudden there's all this life and all this goodness. But it doesn't just stop there and stay in the land of delight. It continues to water all the earth, including some pretty epic places that we're going to run into later in the biblical narrative: Egypt, Babylon, Assyria. And that this gift of life is supposed to go out to all the earth. And it kind of sets you up for the biblical story.
Yeah, it's about the waters that go out from Eden, out into the biblical narrative world, so to speak, becomes a foundational image of God's desire to spread the goodness of Eden out to the nations.
So we'll begin in Deuteronomy 32, 8 and 9. We have here, when the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. But the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is his allotted heritage. Jacob, of course, being another word for Israel. Jacob is Israel. So what do we have here? When did the Most High divide up the nations? When did he allot humankind to specific nations and fix their borders? Well, that's obviously a reference to the Tower of Babel. Now, this is the ESV, and this phrase here, according to the number of the sons of God, does not appear in many other translations. Same thing with verse 43, same chapter, Deuteronomy 32, where we read, "Rejoice with him, O heavens," could be translated, "O heavenly ones. Bow down to him, all gods." In other words, these gods right here, and these gods right here, there's a relationship here. These gods, the sons of God, that God allotted, to the nations. Notice when he divides up the nations, he fixes their borders. He divides them up according to the number of the sons of God. We're going to be looking at some other passages. Essentially, this is the Old Testament rationale for why we have other gods. Where the other pantheons came from of the Gentile nations, the nations who were not the Lord's portion, the nations who were not Israel. This is the Old Testament world after Babel. Nations divided up, assigned to other gods, and in Deuteronomy 4:19 and 20 we see that the gods were assigned to them. But these gods were supposed to be obedient. They were supposed to be obedient to the God of Israel, to Yahweh, the one who did all this, the one who was superior and supreme. I'm going to click out to Deuteronomy 32 here, and just so I can show you the footnotes here, ESV version again. We have here number 2, compare Dead Sea Scrolls Septuagint. Okay, that's where this reading comes from, the number of the sons of God. That is directly from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it's reflected in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament. The Masoretic text, though, the text that most English translations are based on, reads sons of Israel. Get that up again, sons of Israel. Now, it doesn't make any sense. If we're talking about the Babel event, when God divides up the nations, dividing them up according to the number of the sons of Israel, not only is that a textually inferior reading, again, the sons of God is the reading that comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Sons of Israel does not. It's much later. It's in the Masoretic text. But not only is it an inferior textual reading, and you can read all about it. I did a journal article for Dallas Seminary's Journal on the text critical issues in this verse. But it's also illogical. Israel didn't exist at the time of Babel. Israel is not listed in the table of nations connected with the Babel event. It makes no sense to number something according to the number of the sons of Israel because Israel didn't exist in biblical history at that point. So it's obviously a sort of covert reading. It's something that was put into the text at a later time for various reasons, and scholars have different theories about this. And again, this is not news to anyone in the academic community who does Old Testament studies. It's a very well-known verse, very well-known textual issue here. But just on a purely logical level with biblical history and biblical theology, it makes no sense to say sons of Israel because there was no Israel. So let's go back here and take a look at what we're talking about. Again, at the Babel event, we have in Genesis 11, the prior chapter, Genesis 10, is the so-called Table of Nations. We get a list of the nations of the known world at the time to the biblical writer. If you count these up, the number is either going to be 70 in the Masoretic text or 72 in the Septuagint, and it's based upon whether two of the terms are put together or divided. But either way, it's a reference. Either number 70 or 72 is a reference back to the Babel event and this listing. It's a number that's going to come up later in the New Testament when Jesus sends out his disciples. That's going to be interesting. I don't know if we'll get to that in our little talk here, but it's part of the cosmic geography of the Old Testament. But these nations right here are the ones that get divided up. These are the ones that the biblical writers know. Israel, of course, is Yahweh's own portion. All the other nations are assigned to lesser Elohim, assigned to the sons of God. They are allotted to the sons of God, put under their authority so that those gods govern those nations now. This is a punishment in the wake of Babel. I actually refer to this event in Deuteronomy 32:8-9 as the Romans 1 event of the Old Testament. Romans 1 talks about how God gave people up to their own sins, and they get what they deserve, and what they wanted, God gave them and said, well, it's going to cost you. This is going to destroy you. You're going to be a slave to sin and all this stuff. Well, this is what's going on here in the Old Testament. What you have here is God giving up the nations. Up until the time of Babel, he had been working with humanity. He'd taken them out of the flood. He reiterated the covenant to Noah and said, now go disperse over the earth. Of course, they don't do that. They want to call God down at Babel. That's the tower, the quote-unquote tower they're building. Pretty much all Old Testament scholars believe that's a ziggurat in a Mesopotamian context. And it's a temple complex. It's part of a temple complex. It's where you call God to you. And God says, no, this isn't what I said. I said go and disperse the nations, because the whole program here is about spreading my good rule over the whole earth, restoring Eden, making the globe Edenic.
When Joseph and his brothers show up to Egypt, it's described as a garden.
Totally.
I was kind of tripping up on that because it would be weird for the biblical authors to describe Egypt as a garden, because it's going to turn into the place of captivity. But your point was that the river of life is supposed to water everywhere.
The nations.
And God wanted this family to be you called them the river of life,
yeah.
But he wanted them to be the blessing to the nations.
Yep.
And they show up, and when it's done right, Egypt becomes this beautiful place.
Yep.
And the same thing happens in Babylon.
When the nations recognize that God has chosen the seed of the woman, the seed of Abraham, as the source of blessing to the nations, when the nations see that, and then they bless this family, they find the blessing of Eden unleashed in their land, too. And that's exactly the portrait of the good Pharaoh at the end of Genesis. That Pharaoh recognizes and elevates the suffering seed of Abraham, Joseph, elevates him to a place of rule, and all of a sudden they're saved from the famine. And it's through Joseph's wise royal leadership that he saves them and turns Egypt into Eden in the middle of a famine. It's so rich how all these stories work together. But that's right. And so lo and behold, Eden becomes a little mini Eden, and you're like, oh yeah, right. This is like Genesis 2 prepared me for this, that the life of Eden would reach out even to Egypt through the Pishon.
To Havilah, which is near Egypt. Now, why wouldn't it just say Egypt then? If the point is Egypt.
I think we're here to the elusive nature of biblical narrative, where they feed you breadcrumbs to keep you reading, to keep you reading and rereading. Because the next time Havilah is mentioned in the story, it's somebody going on the way to Egypt.
Who was it, Hagar?
Yep, Hagar, and then her son Ishmael go through, find the spring in the land of Shur, which is on the way to Havilah, which is where this family eventually settles. Or take it back to our How to Read the Bible series, places in the Bible aren't just listed for archival notice. They are listed to accumulate meanings and symbolism as you go throughout the story, so that you can connect the threads with the overall plotline.
So you've got Eden, from which water flows that blesses the earth. And then as you move forward in the narrative, you've got Israel going into the promised land, which is described as a new Eden. And they're supposed to be the blessing that flows out to the nations. So you get there and it doesn't go well.
Well, it goes the way it typically goes.
Sometimes good.
Sometimes good, sometimes bad. So I'm thinking here particularly about the stories of Solomon, who's the son of David. Because David establishes Jerusalem, brings the tabernacle there, declares it's going to be the site of the future temple. Solomon.
And all this is screaming Eden.
Oh, yeah. So many things in the book of Samuel are helping you see Jerusalem as the garden in Eden within the land promised to Abraham. And so by the time you get to Solomon, he's presented as an Adam. He's Adam, 5.0 or something by that point. And he describes himself as a child, asking for divine wisdom about good and evil so that he can rule.
Yeah.
And he loves animals. We didn't talk about this. There's that little line about how he just was super interested in animals.
Oh, interesting.
And would study them and built up huge lists of notes and observations about them. And he knew all about animals. But then he blows it.
Accumulates born wives, builds a army.
Wives that are connected to political marriages that are connected to honoring other deities, other gods. It just screams Genesis 3.
That does?
Yeah, in terms of a wife
points them in the right
is
direction.
connected to, or somehow becomes connected to another an evil divine figure that will lead God's people astray.
So they're back in Eden. You're supposed to see it as like kind of a replaying of the Eden story.
Yep.
Or you're supposed to see Eden as kind of this mini little packed story of what Israel is.
Correct.
Because what ends up happening is Israel then is exiled.
Solomon builds a temple, which is a full-on symbolic Eden. Cherubim and gold and jewels, the whole bit. And then his downfall, which leads the nation on an inevitable path back to Babylon in exile.
Which is exactly what happens to humanity when they leave the garden. They end up in Babylon. Definitely supposed to see this as dual stories.
Yes.
So we left off with Israel now in exile in Babylon.
Yeah.
And now going, well, isn't the point that we're supposed to be in God's presence in Eden as his chosen people to like bring blessing to the whole world?
Yes.
And now we're in Babylon.
But now we're in Babylon, and we're back to that letter of Jeremiah that Jeremiah wrote to the people.
Plant some gardens here.
Yeah, come now. This is Jeremiah chapter 29. So this is the letter. This is what the God of Israel says to the exiles in Babylon. Build houses, plant gardens, eat fruit, marry, be fruitful and multiply, right? Become fathers of sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons. Give your daughters for husbands. They may multiply.
Oh, wow. He uses the word multiply.
It's all the language of Eden.
Wow.
Seek the shalom of the city where I have sent you into exile.
And seeking shalom is kind of like ruling.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Or here, remember we talked about this. This is the wisdom warrior. This is choosing not to revolt against your captors, but the upside down kingdom. It's the life of Eden.
The nations around Israel are governed. They're under the authority of hostile gods, hostile divine entities. Now, God says, I'm going to deal with them. But for the time being, those gods are, in the mind of the biblical writer, real, and they're a threat, and they're serious. They are not to be worshipped. Okay, they are to be avoided. And so when you were not in Israel, when you were not in holy ground, you were somewhere else. You were in the domain of another. That, yes, the God of Israel had assigned that turf to one of these other divine beings. So we know, who's superior. But it's still a scary thing. It's still a threat. You're still on territory that was not promised to you by covenant with your God, with the God of Israel. Daniel 10 is the same thing. We have the Prince of Persia, the Prince of Greece. These are divine beings, at least that much. It doesn't rule out that they're working with human authorities, but at the very least, we've got, again, divine authorities over these nations, because we learn that Michael is in charge of Israel. He has been given the caretaking of Israel. And we notice that in Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, too. It's cosmic geography.
So now all of a sudden, here's a little family that's been cast out of Eden, or the river that's flowed out of Eden, ironically, into exile. And it finds itself exactly where one of the rivers of Eden flowed long ago.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. Become the waters of life for Babylon.
Yeah. Can make Babylon a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very counterintuitive. You would think Babylon, hunker down, make the best of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't get corrupted into it,
Yeah.
and maybe even plan a rebellion. But instead, it's get in there and plant gardens and seek the shalom. And when I think of seeking the shalom, I think of, Daniel and his buddies. They're in the king's court.
Yeah.
And they're helping rule.
Yes. We're using right now the Hebrew Bible symbolism, which is good. That's what we should do. But let's just pause and extend this forward. This is exactly the ethic of the apostles and Jesus when they talk about the kingdom of God being here now. Even though all nations don't recognize it, it's here. And with the resurrection of Jesus and the coming of the Spirit, and the Spirit is often depicted with imagery of water, poured out, filled up with it. That's Eden water imagery. And so in the same way, the life of a community living by the Spirit will become a little Eden in the midst of the many Babylons where it finds itself. It's the same paradigm.
Yeah.
Just Jesus and Spirit imagery in the New Testament.
It's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Okay, so that's one place this goes is, even though the waters of Eden aren't mentioned here, but the idea of
Babylon.
The family of Abraham being in Babylon and experiencing the blessing of Eden here in Babylon, that idea has been anticipated.
With the waters flowing from Eden to Babylon.
However, God's people in Babylon isn't the ideal, because Babylon screwed up. Even if you are a blessing to it, not everybody will appreciate that blessing.
Yeah.
Like Nebuchadnezzar didn't always, and his son Belshazzar definitely didn't.
Yeah, there's still this sense of Eden needs to be recreated.
Yeah. So there's two ways this imagery works. One is we've already talked about in the metaphor series, where Isaiah, in Isaiah chapter 2, begins with saying, it will come about at the end of days, in Hebrew, B'acharit Hayamim, at the end of days, the mountain of the house of Yahweh, which the mountain is Jerusalem, and then the house, the new temple. So in the New Jerusalem, in the establishment of the new temple, it will be the head of all mountains. We've made this observation.
Yeah, you brought this up the other day. It's obviously not the tallest mountain.
I was thinking of the time we were standing there, looking up, and just it's so obvious. The Mount of Olives.
Oh, it's taller.
It's taller.
Yeah. It's very clearly not the tallest mountain.
Right. So idea is it will be elevated in cosmic significance, so to speak, raised above the hills. Now, if you have water and you have a mountain, or if you have water in a hillside, obviously water is going to flow where gravity pulls it. But here gravity will be reversed, so to speak, and there will be streams going up to the new temple in the New Jerusalem. But what are the streams? They are the nations.
The nations will stream to it.
Into it. So it's this wonderful depiction of a reverse Eden. Instead of one river going out and splitting and becoming many, the many rivers that are humanity, humans are rivers in this metaphor.
Yeah.
So divided rivers will all become one and return to the new Eden.
And you've pointed out that this word is actually the same word, river. The word river is a verb.
Yes, the word stream.
It's stream in NIV.
In ESV, it's the nations will flow. NIV is the nations will stream. Yeah, in Hebrew, it's the same three letters as the noun river, nahar. So a nahar is a river, a noun. And then what a river does is a nahar nahars.
For us, a river flows.
A river rivers. The nations river back into the new Eden. Yep. So again, that assumes that the poet here has reflected a lot on that river in the Genesis narrative and sees that there's more than just somebody trying to tell me ancient geography. For me, this is important. This is a biblical author reflecting back on that river of Eden, and he sees it in terms of its symbolic significance as an image of the blessing of Eden to the nations.
And you're sure of that because it would be clear that Eden is a temple in the way that on a mountain, in the way that the temple is on Mount Zion.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and specifically that the river of Eden flows to areas of Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, and then one of the rivers is also the name of the spring in Jerusalem, which is where everybody's coming back. And who are the major imperial powers in the Bible?
Yeah.
There's just only three. And they're the three that are going to feature big in the book of Isaiah. Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon are like the most significant bad guys in the book of Isaiah. So this is the river metaphorically returning in the people. Ezekiel, famously, in chapter 47, like Daniel, he's also in Babylon, the prophet Ezekiel.
Uh-huh.
He had a vision of the divine Eden throne, the Garden of Eden glory mobile appearing to him in the first pages. All these animals are the cherubim bearing it and so on. At the end of the book, he sees a vision of a new Jerusalem. Actually, here, it begins in chapter 40. So he says, in the 25th year of our exile, exactly halfway through a 50-year Jubilee cycle, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th of the month, in the 14th year after the city was taken.
Jerusalem was taken.
Jerusalem. The mention of Jerusalem. Halfway through Jubilee cycle, after the capture of Jerusalem, the hand of Yahweh was on me, and he brought me there. Where is there?
Jerusalem. It's like a vision.
Yeah. In other places, it's the Spirit of the Lord seized me or took me. He's having a dream vision. And he's being taken, clearly, to Jerusalem. In visions of Elohim, he brought me into the land of Israel and set me on a really high mountain. Okay.
Why wouldn't he specify which mountain if this is supposed to be the Jerusalem mountain?
Oh, I think he's intentionally not using the name Jerusalem because he's trying to paint this portrait on top of the Eden mountain of Genesis 2.
Oh.
Yep, for sure.
Oh, okay.
So he's using the language that the prophets used to talk about Eden and the new Eden, which is a new Jerusalem. And there was a structure like, lo and behold, a city. So a city on a very high mountain that's connected to Jerusalem. But yes, up there is a structure of a city. Then he's going to get a tour in verse 5, and behold, there was a wall outside of a house, which is the temple. He gets a tour of a new temple in a new Jerusalem on a high exalted mountain. And so that is the framework. This is actually one of the most boring sections of Ezekiel to read. It straight up reads like an architectural tour.
Yeah.
It's all these measurements, and he's going into gates and looking at windows and altars and so on. So once the tour finishes in Ezekiel 47.
Oh, wow, it's that long. 7-chapter tour of a visionary temple.
Yep. Then verse 1 of chapter 47, he brought me back to the door of the house, the temple, and behold, water was flowing from under the threshold of the house, of the temple, to the east, because the entrance of the house faced the east, like the temple, and like Eden. Remember that when they were expelled from Eden, they went
east
to the east. And the water was flowing down from the right, that is the east side of the house, from the south of the altar. No, from the right, that is from the south of the house, that is from south of the altar. So he led me out by way of the north gate and led me around on the outside to the outer gate that faces east. And look, water was trickling out from the south side.
It's trickling out from the south side, but it was heading east. That's right?
Yeah.
So it's coming out south.
I mean, it's trickling out from under the threshold of the south gate. But then as it trickles out, it starts to head east.
Okay.
Which means it's heading down the hills towards the Dead Sea.
If this is in Jerusalem.
Correct. Well, whatever it is. Yeah. I mean, people debate these things. Okay. So then there's this man who is an angel, but he's never called an angel. He's just called a man. Went out and he measured the water, 1,000 cubits, and he led me in and it reached up to my ankles. He led me another 1,000 cubits up to my knees. Another 1,000 cubits he led me in up to my waist. Another 1,000, and I can't cross this thing, he says.
So it's like flooding the land.
The point is within a short distance, it becomes a wide, deep river. I think that's the emphasis of all these steps is
I see.
1,000 cubits, a cubit's, I think, 1.5 feet, something like that. So the point is from a trickle, within a few
Pretty
thousand
amazing
feet,
river.
it just chews into a super deep, wide river. And then he goes back to the bank of the river, and there's all these trees on one side, on the other. And then he says, look, these trees are going to go down into the Arava and then into the Dead Sea. And guess what? The most desolate place on planet Earth is going to become, oh, wait, does he say it? Healed. Yes, it will be healed.
The water becomes fresh.
And the word fresh is a paraphrase. Literally, it says it will be healed.
Yeah, here we go. It says salty water there becomes fresh.
Yeah.
What's that in Hebrew?
healed. I mean, it goes down to the sea. It's one of the saltiest bodies of water on the planet.
Yeah.
Whoa, okay. Hey, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's like the Tehom. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're waters of death.
Yeah.
But the prophet Joel in chapter 3 also has a whole set of images where he says, it's framed in the opening sentence of Joel 3, in those days and at that time, when I restore the fortunes of Judah and Jerusalem. That's the setting of the poem. And then there's a whole line, in that day, the mountains will drip with sweet wine.
Yeah.
Hills will flow with milk. The brooks of Judah will flow with water, and a spring, a fountain, will go out from the house of Yahweh to water the valley of Shittim. It's a similar image as
A spring coming from a place that we recognize as an Eden-type place.
Yeah.
Watering.
Yeah.
And what's the Valley of Shittim?
Yeah, I was going to look that up. Anchor Bible Dictionary. The encampment site of Israel in the plains of Moab, on the northeast of the Dead Sea. Mm-hmm. There we go. It's the same as Ezekiel. It goes out to the Dead Sea region. That's right. And Shittim is the place where the Israelites fell into the idolatrous and sexually immoral practices at Baal Peor. It's where they start worshiping Baal and having ritual sex with Moabite women. That place is healed by the river of life. I hadn't noticed that detail before.
When was that? Was that during their...
It's before they enter the land.
Yeah,
before they enter the land. Yep.
Oh, right, because that's where they're kind of staged before they can enter.
Correct. Yep. Zechariah chapter 14. This is awesome. Zechariah 12 through 14 are a bunch of oracles depicting the day of the Lord. So there's a lot of judgment imagery, like the nations and the Israelites who have been violent and faithless. They're going to be excluded or judged or destroyed. But verse 6, in that day there will be no light. There will be no light.
So like it's like really bad.
We're back to Genesis 1 imagery.
Yeah, we're back to...
Yeah, tohu vavohu. So there will not...
frosty darkness.
Yeah, that's right.
There'll neither be sunlight or darkness.
In that day, there will not be light.
No light.
Yep. And it will be day 1. That's what it says in Hebrew.
Really?
It's the same phrase from Genesis 1.
Oh my
and it will be
goodness.
Yom Echad.
Yeah.
Right? And you're just like, oh yeah.
Day 1.
We're going back to day 1.
Here it is.
It, that day, is alone known to Yahweh. Remember when Jesus is asked, when's the day? And he's like, man, I don't know. It's known alone to the Father.
Oh.
This is for sure the sentence in his mind. There won't be day or night. And of course, if there's no night, there's no sequence of day or night.
Yeah, there's no time yet.
Yeah. But it will come about that right at the evening time, when you think it's going to be eternal darkness, light. There will be light. So look how this is 2 little lines here that are all riffing off of Genesis 1 through 3. There will be no light. Well, where there's no light, there's nothingness. We're just back to day 1.
Yeah. Pre-day 1.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, the nothingness of tohu vavohu.
Yeah, darkness over the deep.
That's right. And it will be at the time of evening.
Which is weird.
Which is weird. I guess it's saying within our frame of reference.
Towards the end of the day.
Towards the end of the...
But there is no day or night.
There is no day or night. There will be light. I think we're recalling the imagery of the light coming into the darkness in Genesis 1.
Yeah, here comes day 1.
Yeah. And it will be on that day...
Day 1.
...that waters of life will go out from Jerusalem. Half to the eastern sea, that's the Dead Sea, and half to the western sea, that's the Mediterranean, in summer and in winter, year round. Because a lot of the streams out there, if they're water fed, they dry up
during the summer.
in the summer.
Yeah.
But this is eternal water of life going out from Jerusalem, not just to the Dead Sea, but also now.
Both ways.
Both ways, yeah. And then, notice the imagery here. This thing is so hyperlinked. And Yahweh will be king over all the land. And in that day, Yahweh will be one, and his name one. It's the Shema. That's so good. And the whole land will be changed into a plain. It goes on. The imagery gets a lot more bizarre. But this is enough to make the point. You can see what he's doing here.
Yeah.
He's reading Genesis 1 and 2 together as symbols of cosmic dissolution and recreation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the waters of life, there they are again, giving life to the new creation.
And so all of these are Israel's prophets who are seeing that here we are, we're not in Eden, we're not in the land, the temple is gone, something needs to change. And the way they think of that is the day of the Lord, God coming and and human history and
just like the flood, handing the world over to its chaos because of human violence. That's the flood. It's a decreation, like the flood was, and then a new creation emerging out of the old one.
And one of the ways they talk about that new creation is waters flowing from Eden.
Correct. That's
which
right.
is the image we get in Genesis 2.
There you go.
We all know this story. Remember the account when, Paul goes back to Jerusalem after his missionary journeys, and he had been told in Acts 20, let me see if I have this here. Yes, I do. Acts 20, verse 22, Paul says, "Now behold, I'm going to Jerusalem, constrained by the Spirit." I mean, the Spirit's just you got to get back there, not knowing what will happen to me, except that the Holy Spirit testifies to me in every city that imprisonment and afflictions await me. Paul says, look, I got to get back to Jerusalem. I'm done with my work here. I know bad stuff's going to happen to me because the Spirit tells me that. In Acts 21, when he gets there, he seeks out disciples, stays there 7 days. Through the Spirit, they were telling Paul not to go on to Jerusalem. So now he's in Judea, and he's a little closer. They say, look, Paul, don't go to Jerusalem. Don't go, something bad's going to happen. And it even says elsewhere in the passage that the Spirit was telling them too, when Paul goes to Jerusalem, something bad's going to happen. He's going to get arrested. Something's going to happen. While we were staying for many days, a prophet named Agabus came down from Judea. Coming to us, he took Paul's belt, bound his own feet and hands, and says, "Thus says the Holy Spirit, this is how the Jews of Jerusalem will bind the man who owns this belt and deliver him in the hand of the Gentiles." Even a prophet empowered by the Spirit says, "Paul, if you go down there, you're going to be arrested. You're going to be taken. You're going to be captured." Well, Paul knows this. This is not news to him. Look at what he said earlier in Acts 19. This is prior to Acts 20, when Paul makes up his mind to go to Jerusalem. Look at what he says. Paul resolved in the Spirit to pass through Macedonia and Achaia and to go to Jerusalem. So as Paul is winding up his work, he's already got Jerusalem on his mind. And look at what he says. He says, "After I've been there, I must also see Rome." Paul fully expected to get to Rome. Now, he doesn't know that his arrest in Jerusalem is going to be the means by which he gets to Rome. But he knows he needs to go to Rome. Why? Because he has to keep moving west to get back the Gentile nations that were listed in Genesis 10. We haven't been to the westernmost part yet, a place called Tarshish. If you remember, let's go back. I don't want to give you a headache here, but let's go back. Right here. See, here's Italy. Here's where Rome is. There's a spot mentioned here back in the Table of Nations that we haven't hit yet. Right here. Tarshish. It's an outlier. Paul says, got to get to Jerusalem, and I'm going to go to Rome too. And when he writes to the Romans, he gets arrested in 54. He's under Roman imprisonment. When he writes Romans, he's writing to them saying, "Hey, I'm going to see you guys. I'm on my way. I'm on trial. I'm going to go appeal to Caesar. I'm going to get to see you guys." Look at what he writes. "Thus I make it my ambition to preach the gospel, not where Christ has already been named, lest I build on someone else's foundation. But now, since I no longer have any room for work in these regions, these places where I've done my business, I'm done there. Since I have longed for many years to come to you, Roman believers, I hope to see you in passing as I go to Spain." And when therefore I have completed this and have delivered to them what has been collected, I'll leave for Spain by way of you. Why does Paul believe he's going to get to Spain? Why does Paul want to go there so bad? Why? Again, here's where Acts is going to end up. The journey back to Rome. Here's where he needs to go. Guess what? Guess where Tarshish is? Spain. This is why Paul wants to get there. Paul, in his mind, is living out, let's go back here, he is living out the fulfillment of passages like Isaiah 66, where God said, I'm going to reclaim the nations. Paul is fully conscious of the Old Testament worldview that all these other places are under dominion. And the gospel needs to get to all of them to reclaim them for the God of Israel.
Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, like, share, turn on the alerts for this channel. All those things help us get the message out about what God has done for this world, and we're so excited to have you here along for the journey. This is a community, and I've loved having all the response and all the connection that I've had with you guys across the globe. So thankful you're here. Tune in, stay tuned, as we always say. The beginning is near. We've got more coming. See you soon.